Thank you. So next up, we're talking about entering the energy industry. We'll be back right after this video.
In the last 10 years, employment in renewable energy has almost doubled, reaching nearly 13.7 million people worldwide in 2022. By 2030, the energy transition could create as many as 100 million jobs. The continued development of renewable energy is contingent upon finding skilled workers to fill these roles. How can the renewable energy sector encourage workers to join the energy industry, while also ensuring that they have the right skills? What skills already exist that are transferable? Our next panel, Entering the Energy Industry, explores this growing job market and what both companies and job seekers can expect in the future.
Welcome back. And now we're talking about entering the energy industry. So now we're going to discuss how we can encourage just professionals to join the energy industry and how we can make their transfer as seamless as possible. To discuss this, we have Tobias Klug, co-founder of a stealth startup. He previously worked as a venture architect with a focus on sustainable innovation. He's passionate about startups and making the world a better place through entrepreneurship. Welcome, Tobias.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all, and great to be on the panel today.
Thanks, Tobias. Joining him, we have Thomas Heywood, who you might also recognize from last year. He is a co-founder of WeEngage Group, a clean tech firm that helps sustainable tech companies hire talented team members who have the drive to apply their skills to help fight climate change. He has experience working with companies ranging from startups to internationally established organizations. Thomas, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me again, Greta. It's nice to see you again.
You too. And we have Sarah McCormack, Professor in Sustainable Energy at the Trinity College Dublin. Sarah has published numerous works on the topic of sustainability with a strong emphasis on solar energy. She holds a PhD in solar energy from Ulster University. Sarah, welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the introduction. Look forward to today, and thanks for having me along.
Of course. And of course, you've probably noticed the woman sitting next to me, Pia Kilian, Senior Manager of Employer Branding at gridX. Pia holds a bachelor's and master's degree in business administration, but it was while doing a dual course for study for her bachelor's that she found her passion for employer branding. Before joining gridX 1.5 years ago, she worked in a subsidiary of Robert Bosch. Pia, welcome to the actual stage.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Great. All right, let's dive straight into the topics. Thomas, what are people's main motivation to join the energy industry? And do you think there's a good understanding of its benefits?
Yeah, thank you, Greta, for the introduction there. And it's a really important question that I think a lot of people are asking and are wanting to gain more insight into. It's crucial that we have people that are motivated to join the energy transition. And I think one real positive thing is that we've seen over the past couple of years is a number of people since the pandemic have really wanted to do something that's impactful with their careers. A lot of individuals are now wanting to consider and are wanting to do something through their daily work that actually provides them with something more meaningful than just kind of career opportunities and pay. And that's really powerful. Secondly, I think climate change is a topic that is becoming well known. It's very well known in the news, and it's a topic that I think a lot of people are discussing all of the time, and it's a real powerful motivator. And as I mentioned, people are increasingly looking for careers now that doesn't only just provide a livelihood, but also contributes positively to the planet. And the energy sector, especially with the shift towards renewables, offers a unique opportunity to be at the forefront of this challenge, which is really positive. I think ultimately a lot of people are not aware of the benefits which can come with the energy transition or sustainability in general. And I think we need to do a little bit more to kind of talk about the innovations of technology advancements that are being made by businesses such as gridX, as an example. And the energy business is really complex, and energy in general is really complex, and it's constantly evolving all of the time. Think about the strides that we're making in solar, wind, and energy storage as an example. These are all really, really critical energy projects and energy infrastructure projects that we need to think about. So I think for anyone that has a love for cutting edge technology or problem solving, the sector can actually be incredibly appealing to those individuals. But I do think that we need to do a little bit more to share the benefits of exactly what is happening with businesses such as gridX, to share with them, and others obviously, to share with them about what they can actually do with their skills to make the world a better place and to have a powerful impact on their careers as well.
Thanks, Thomas. And just going a little bit deeper into that, Pia, that's a big part of your job, is sharing the benefits of joining a company like gridX. Yeah. What are the challenges around that, and how do you kind of communicate that clearly?
I mean, as Tom mentioned, I think we definitely need to spread the word, how amazing this industry is. And first of all, it definitely is very important to be authentic. So don't say something that you cannot hold afterwards. Just really ask your employees why they love working at your companies or company, or why did they join you in the first place, and then try to take that message out to the world, and really be authentic. And then as Thomas mentioned, I think a lot of people would love to join in an industry like that.
In your experience, how do you find once people join the energy industry, how are their satisfaction levels?
I mean, satisfaction levels as subjective matters. So what works for one person may not work for another. And also job satisfaction in the industry totally depends on different roles, experiences, and so on. Nevertheless, I definitely do have the feeling that people who made the switch, as Thomas mentioned, are literally inspired by working in an industry that has such a strong impact. And they also love the fact that it's such a challenging and dynamic environment. And when I talk to my colleagues at gridX who have worked in different industries before, one thing definitely becomes clear, and it is that the spirit, the task, the environment, the culture in companies like gridX really is unique. And I have the feeling that people who made the switch, they definitely stick around. So I would say apparently their satisfaction level is pretty high.
Yeah. And Tobias, switching more to a business perspective of scaling a company, we can't scale energy products without the people behind it doing it. How much of a hindrance is not being able to find the right people when scaling and expanding a company?
Yeah, thanks very much for this question. Maybe just a comment on what was said before. So I'm one of the few people that did the switch, and I can confirm it brings a lot of satisfaction. That just as a side note. Coming back to your question, so I think if we talk about the energy space, it's quite broad, and I cannot speak for the whole industry, but what I can speak for is like the skilled labor part of things, right? So where I'm coming from with the company that we're building right now, we're focused on private individuals, homeowners that are trying to switch to renewables within their house, right? So they need to, for example, go change the heating for a heat pump. Now, if you want to see that happening at scale, what you need is a lot of skilled labor, a lot of people that actually get up in the morning, drive to the construction site and do the work. And we are now facing a huge labor market crisis in that sector in countries like Germany, like the UK, like France. So I think for a lot of those technologies, we're in a situation where there's quite some interest from customers to switch to those technologies, right? So taking the heat pump as an example again, right? There's lots of people that are starting to understand, okay, it makes sense to next time when my heating breaks, switch to a heat pump. But then when they actually want to make the switch, they don't find those people, right? They call the local craftsman. The local craftsman will say, oh, I'm only available end of 2024, but you're in a situation where your heating is broken now. Now, if you want to build a company within that space, and offer these kind of technologies to your end customers, you need to be able to grow a workforce that can do the actual installation, right? That has the skills to do that. And that's a massive challenge. And that's what many startups in the solar space, in the heating space are facing right now. And in the end, this is what defines the success of these companies, right? So the companies that manage to build the best employer for skilled people, for skilled labor, for craftsmen especially, these are the companies that will win the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tobias. And Sarah, we've talked a bit about switching into the energy industry, but how are you finding demand for people wanting to study energy, whether it's a undergraduate or a postgraduate diploma? You know, how are you finding demand at the moment, and are you seeing a bit of a shift?
Yes, I suppose in terms of the industry, it's you know, as Tobias has mentioned, it's growing phenomenally, and we are looking at the skills shortage, and so trying to encourage students into this sector is really, really important for us. And I suppose when we start off in degrees, they're generally you know, say engineering degrees, maybe environmental science, maybe economics and business, and trying to get them to tailor their sort of end up field of study or field of employment into energy is really important. So we try to tailor that, try to tell them a bit more about the sector. In terms of our postgraduate offering, mostly we would offer, you know, postgraduate diplomas, masters, PhDs in the area, and trying to really encourage industry to come and speak to our students is really, really valuable. So hopefully some of them are tuning in today to listen to Thomas and Tobias here and from gridX to give that encouragement into the industry. We find we have a very diverse group of students coming in at postgraduate level. We could have students that are coming, just recent graduates that have just finished their undergraduate degrees in engineering, science, you know, economics, and they're trying to specialize into the energy sector, which is really important, trying to sort of gain that competitive edge and be first on the list for, you know, whenever you guys are going out with job vacancies. We also have people, you know, mid-career that, you know, they have, they're working in related fields, but not specifically energy. You know, they may already be engineers or scientists and trying to then, you know, diversify into the energy sector. We also have complete, you know, career changers where people are maybe working in the pharmaceutical industry, but not in the energy sector, and then sort of work on, you know, doing a postgraduate diploma in the energy area and then moving into that sector then after that. So that's really, you know, those are the main ones. We also have, you know, international students that are looking for that international development or international dimension to the energy sector, maybe coming into Europe, trying to understand that better. And then, of course, we have the entrepreneurs that are coming in that not necessarily, you know, they have the big ideas, but just trying to get that bit of background, you know, the education or the certification, I suppose, just to have that, you know, that sort of acknowledgement of their expertise is always useful to have that sort of qualification behind them too. So that can be useful. And so it really is diverse in terms of the actual type of students that we get. And the range then of jobs is, you know, I mean, we hear it here in terms of, you know, what everyone's doing. You know, you can have, you know, hugely different outputs whenever you go into the energy sector. So you can have, you know, like energy engineers that are, you know the technology, they're looking at installation, construction, all of that side. You have energy analysts, maybe looking at policy, looking at the markets and business case and that side of things. We have, you know, sustainability side, so people from the whole company aspect, from the sustainability management type of scenario. We have project finance, so economics, business, all of that side. So, you know, we really have a huge range of, you know, of, I suppose, jobs that are available to people after these types of courses, but trying to make them a little bit more aware of the possibilities, I think, is really key. So trying to get in early to tell the students, these are the breadth of opportunities that are available in the energy sector at the moment, and we are crying out for graduates in this sector. And so it's really important that they go into this space and help us to try to achieve, you know, our climate action targets around sustainable energy.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Sarah. And as you mentioned, there's obviously a lot of people with a huge variety of skill sets and backgrounds trying to get a huge variety of jobs. Pia, in your experience, how important is it when looking for new joiners that they have experience in the energy industry or have studied something energy related? Or what do you find is most important that they bring in terms of skills or characteristics?
I mean, it's not necessary that they have experience. Of course, it can be an advantage, and there are also roles where it is necessary without a doubt. But besides the educational background, we look more into a key consideration like transferable skills, as Thomas also mentioned before. So does the candidate have skills like problem solving, project management, and also the adaptability to succeed in the energy industry? And second, and most importantly, definitely is passion and alignment. So is there a passion for innovation, a passion for environmental sustainability, and also the alignment with the company's missions as very crucial. And we often do have the feeling when we are doing interviews with candidates that you can literally feel or see that the spark has ignited. So it is definitely not necessary if you have passion and alignment.
Thanks, Pia. And Tobias, talking about these transferable skills, you've made the jump yourself. What are some examples of some transferable skills that are, relevant in other industries, but are also in energy?
Yeah, very good question. So I think education is key, but we're living in such a fast-moving world, right, that you cannot expect that everybody that wants to go to that industry also has an educational background here, right? And that's why I think changing jobs is a key thing to make the transition happen, the energy transition happen. If I need to talk about specific skills, I think we can maybe break it down into 3 buckets that I see from my work that is kind of most required. So first thing I already talked about is craft skills, right? So somebody that has worked, let's say, in heating installation for gas and oil heating can definitely quite fastly do the switch towards installing heat pumps. We've seen lots of people coming from very different trades, backgrounds, and now moving into installing solar, right? So if you're generally strong on your craft skills, knowing how to use tools, I think making that kind of transition is a very great step. Then the next bucket I see is more on the tech side of things, where we can talk about software as well as hardware, right? So lots of the technology for making the energy transition happening is already there, but it can still be improved, right? If you look at how much better solar panels got in the last years, this is the work of a lot of engineers, software and hardware engineers, working on these tiny improvements that step by step make those technologies way more efficient, and therefore not only better for the environment, but also for kind of the economic side of things, right? So cheaper for the end customer. And then the last bucket I see is more from the management side of things. So for example, if you talk to utilities today that are building up wind parks or solar parks, one of the huge gaps they have is project managers that actually find the land where you can build up a new project, where you can maybe install a big solar park, then do all the stakeholder negotiations with the local farmer that you maybe buy it from, the local politician, and so on. So you definitely also need people that kind of have more business or management background, and they definitely do not have to know all the details about the energy industry, right? They don't need to know how exactly a wind park or a solar panel works to get started in those jobs, but what we need is people that can negotiate, that can convince, that can do sales. So in the end, I think everybody that can find a passion for the energy space and has some skill set can jump in, start getting into that industry. And then, of course, there's lots of programs to also upskill yourself and bring in this kind of hard skills that might still be lacking.
Thanks, Tobias. And I want to delve a little bit deeper into, you mentioned software developers. I think that's a really interesting use case of looking at that. Thomas, you might have some experience with this of candidates who have worked in different industries in software development. How do you normally find their reactions if you might suggest the energy industry? Or do you think they are more motivated to work in an industry like that? Or do you think for them, I don't know, how's their viewpoint normally?
So from the viewpoint of ourselves, we're speaking to many software engineers on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. The significant amount of them do not even realize that this entire industry and sector exists. And we see ourselves as, and it's a word that we'll keep repeating today many times, we see ourselves as an educational business. Because like I said, the majority of times when we speak to people, they just do not know that this entire sector exists. And we can actually back that up with some statistics, because we recently did a survey of all of the candidates that we had worked with and placed them into sustainability in energy jobs over the past 12 months. And actually 42% of respondents did not even consider or did not even realize that they could apply their skills to an impact-focused organization before speaking to ourselves. Now, I think that's a huge statistic. 42% of people did not even realize that this kind of sector existed in some ways. I guess they knew the energy sector was there, but they didn't realize that they could apply their skills to that and actually create a huge amount of impact. And that's quite surprising, but also it doesn't shock me in some ways, because when I'm on the telephone speaking to these people, they're very surprised. And I think there's a huge barrage of noise from the recruitment sector, from many agencies, but also general companies that are from fintech organizations, from the latest artificial intelligence kind of businesses and things like this. And they do sometimes overshadow the climate technology sector a little bit. And I think our task and our job here is to cut through the noise and to inspire people and let them know that AI and software development still continues in energy businesses, and actually software engineering as a sector and as a skill set is actually vital towards the energy transition. Without software engineering, we can't do a lot of the automation pieces. We can't work with things like IoT, and we can't connect the devices and the assets to the internet, which we need, because we need to get the data from them, et cetera, et cetera. And that's surprising for a lot of candidates, because they seem to think that maybe the energy sector sometimes is a little bit more archaic. They think it's not as advanced as what it is. And as I mentioned, our task is to really make sure that these people know that software engineering plays a fundamental role in the energy sector as well. And that's also true for people such as product owners and people that look after the product, but also as Tobias mentioned as well, there's also project managers in software engineering. We need project managers to install wind farms and solar farms and things like this, but we also need project managers to work on large scale digital transformation projects, which are also vital to the energy transition.
And Thomas, just on that, do you think energy exists in a bit of a bubble? Do you think it's, still maybe kind of a bit of a legacy of now we're becoming more integrated, but do you think it is kind of, people think that it's this, a sector out there in the ether, but they don't really think about it, and how can we change that?
I think it comes down to the fact that we probably take energy for granted. We plug in a lamp or we plug in our laptops and it just works, right? Do people really think past the plug, so to speak? Do people think about what actually happens and where that energy comes from? I think we talk about solar farms and wind farms. Are people educated enough on the grid? Do people understand how that works and how energy distribution works and load balancing and things like this? Maybe not. And I think you're probably right in what you're saying, Greta, though, which is, do people see it as a bit more of a legacy sector because we just take it for granted? We've just always had it. Growing up, we were just able to, turn on a light and the lights come on. Do we think what actually happens before that? And actually, there's a significant amount of work that takes place every single day to keep the lights on, so to speak. Do people really consider what happens before that? And I think that's the really interesting point of this, which is when we do speak to candidates and we represent really innovative, usually startups, but really innovative businesses that are doing something transformational in the grid sector or the energy sector, they're quite surprised because they've never heard of some of these terminologies before, and they didn't realize there's an entire infrastructure out there with businesses that are disrupting that.
Thanks, Thomas. And Pia, what do you think? How can we educate people that there is this young, dynamic kind of startup vibe to energy now as well that's really fun to be a part of?
I think one important point is definitely to use your employees as like brand ambassadors, because often they are literally the best people to spread the word and to make sure that also other people join the energy industry. And we attended a lot of recruiting events also this year, and it was so interesting to see that many people in the first place didn't even know what we were doing or never heard of gridX before. And when we talked to them and discussed all the interesting topics, as mentioned, the spark was literally ignited. So really just go out, spread the word, use, of course, also social media, and try to do a lot of brand awareness.
Yeah, thanks. And Sarah, what sort of skills are people looking to study in the energy area do you find? What are people kind of most interested in from a university point of view?
Well, I suppose it depends on the students. Whenever we think about energy, I suppose from my point of view, I'm in the School of Engineering. So taking that type of slant, we do have very sort of specific skill sets that you do need in energy. Well, we do have many cross-cutting and transferable skills across that. We have the sort of fundamental and technical skills that are required, and to make those sort of advances in the industry, from like wind advances and solar advances, to make sure we're at the best, we're creating the best technologies. It's important to have those skill sets, so things around thermodynamics and fuel mechanics and electrical circuits. So they're not for everybody, so I grant you that. But at the same time, we do need a cohort of students and graduates that are, coming out in that space to be able to lead those areas and to lead those advances. We have, in terms of the renewable technologies, so understanding, the background behind, how wind turbine works. Well, grant you the business case doesn't need that, but somebody needs to understand that to be involved, in the company at least. And, things that are more technical, maybe in terms of, data analysis and modeling, you're moving outside of the sort of more, traditional sort of engineering streams, more into computational engineering, and, AI and machine learning is becoming really, really important, as we start to generate lots of data sets around energy generation and energy efficiency and management. How do we actually work with those and do something valuable with them? So it's important that we have graduates in those spaces as well. Of course, we need people in, policy, energy policy and regulation. Those areas are really important to try to, I suppose, to try to be as flexible now as we start to change our grid infrastructure, trying to change the way that we generate and trying to make that, a more sort of, instead of our or centralized generation, trying to move away from that, and to look at these policies to enable that, to try to encourage that, rather than, the fixed sort of traditional view that we would have of energy systems. Grid integration, of course, fundamental in terms of how we can, be more agile, allow more systems, allow more tech onto the grid. That's really letting us down from an Irish perspective. We have a lot of wind on the grid, but we need to be able to allow more because we have one of the best wind resources. But the thing that's stopping us now is our grid infrastructure. So having students that are working in that space is really important. And generally, as Thomas said, there is a sort of to ignore the pun, a bit of a disconnect between that idea of turning on your electricity and where it's coming from. So trying to get students to understand that you're looking out, and if you're not agreeing with a wind farm that's going to be located close to your home, that actually, how else are you going to generate your electricity in your home? So trying to increase awareness around that, but also being cognizant of the fact that, we're undertaking important environmental assessment of our tech as well, so that we're not creating problems. The solutions today aren't the future's problems to deal with. So those are really key in terms of, looking at life cycle assessment. So trying to encourage students into that side of things, the area of circular economy, making sure that we're not creating a large waste stream, maybe particularly in solar or some of the renewable tech that we are, expanding in a phenomenal scale, but trying to understand how we don't create a huge problem down the line with all of that too. So, we have such a vast range. And then as we talked about the transferable skills, so in every stage we need project managers. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, they are such a valuable commodity. And that sort of, and particularly in energy, it's this sort of interdisciplinary collaboration. So this communication skills, all of that side of things is really fundamental in trying to bring your technical people together with your business people, together with your management, and trying to encourage those conversations. And that's really fundamental skills as well. So students are interested in, not in all of those, but we do need all of those types of graduates to come out to help our industry and move forward and accelerate much faster, because we're making good strides, but we need to even move faster than we are at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. And speaking of bringing people together, we've had a question from the audience, which I'm going to direct to you, Pia. Someone has asked, how important is networking in facilitating the entry of professionals into the energy sector? What role do mentorship programs play?
I mean, networking is always very important, and especially when it comes to the energy industry, because we have people who really who work at gridX who really have like a wide range of a network, and they often still are in touch. And if these people at some point are looking for a new challenge or want to dive deep into another industry, there's definitely the point where, as mentioned before, use your employees for your brand awareness, where they could step in and try to get these people on board. And I mean, mentorship is also a very great opportunity for, especially to go into communication with universities and stuff like that. So if you, as Sarah also mentioned before, if you give them some industry insights and give them the possibility to have a look. I mean, sometimes they're like 18 till 23 years old, so you cannot they maybe not imagine what they want to do after they finish university. So give them the opportunity to show them how great the energy industry is, and start right from the scratch. Yeah.
Nice. Does anyone else have anything to add to that question?
I think that sorry, I was just going to add there. I'm muting myself. Sorry. I think we just also need to make sure that we also provide enough opportunities once these people have gone through their education in university. One thing that we've seen is a distinct lack of kind of internships or opportunities for people once they've actually completed their degree, whether it's bachelor's or master's. And it's really difficult for them to actually then get their foot into the door, because a lot of companies are only looking for experienced hires. And I think sometimes what we need to do is we need to say, well, we need to kind of go one layer lower a little bit and say, well, we can't hire this person experienced, but we can do is we can bring in a couple of people who have the theoretical knowledge, and we want them to build out something to give them the actual knowledge. And I think it comes down to those individuals to network and to speak to as many companies as they physically can to open up doors for themselves with things like internships and getting their first jobs into the energy sector.
Thanks, Thomas. And we've had another question from the audience. It's a tricky one. Tobias, I might try and see if you can answer this one. In what ways can government policies support and incentivize professionals to enter the energy revolution? Are there successful examples of such policies?
It's not such a tricky question, because it's one of the key points for me, right? So let's go maybe back to the craftsman example, right? So the installation space is very fragmented, right? In most countries, you have thousands of small installer companies. Now imagine you run such a installer company, maybe 4 or 5 employees, all of them craftsmen. You've been installing, you've done some plumbing, maybe installing some oil and gas heating. If you want to make the transition now towards sustainable systems and energy transition empowering technology, that's a huge step for you, right? You need to invest time, right? You need to send all your staff to trainings, sometimes to new suppliers who train them on the new technology. You need to take some money and buy new tools. You need to maybe change the communication towards your customers, right? It's a huge step. And what those people need, especially those small businesses, is clarity from a government level of where are we heading within this industry, right? They need to know, okay, the goal is to install X amount of solar panels, Y amount of heat pumps next year. The subsidies are going to look like this. The subsidy application process works like that, right? What these people need is planning security. And I think this is the same for a couple of other industries. That's one side. The other side is when it comes to education, especially in a country like Germany, that's quite has a lot of bureaucracy, but also in a few other countries. It's not like you can start doing a job and just, for example, go ahead and connect a solar system to the energy grid, right? There's like certain legal steps within there. So you need to be a certified person to be able to do that. Now, to bring people to the point where they have these kind of certificates, they need to go through a quite heavy educational process. They need to have certain degrees and so on and so forth. So next to kind of creating the security of planning what's coming ahead, the governments are in charge now to create that educational programs and make it super easy to get those skills that you need to be able to implement those technologies. So we need new kinds of educational programs. We need to make training, especially in the non-academical area, right, when it comes to skilled labor, way more attractive and way more forward-looking. If you, for example, want to become a craftsman in the heating space today, in Germany, but lots of other northern countries as well, you go through a very traditional training, right? So you will learn for 80% of your time about fossil technologies, like how to install an oil heating, how to install a gas heating, how to repair something on an oil or gas heating. And you have only a very small share of renewable technology within that training programs. It's super old school, super outdated. So now the governments are really in charge to not only, have those policies where they say, we want to be carbon neutral by date Y, but they need to take the next step and talk to people from these industries and understand, okay, what do these industries, what do these people actually need to get there, right? Because it's easy to say, we're going to install 250,000 heat pumps, but somebody needs to actually go out there and install them and needs to know, okay, who will pay for that? My customer, partly the government. What skills do I need? So the governments are very much in charge here.
Thanks, Tobias. I think you brought up a very interesting point of people learning a lot of kind of outdated things. Sarah, how do you find that of terms of diplomas or things like that when the energy transition is making the energy industry constantly change? So every year there's new technology, there's new things, there's new players, there's new partnerships and things like that. How do you keep up to date with this constant change? Does education need to be constantly changing with this?
Well, I suppose the answer is yes, of course. And, you do have the fundamental concepts that are not changing, but a lot of the industry is changing and the application of that is changing. So having graduates that are adaptable to those changes is really important. And as Tobias mentioned there about, training and skill sets, not everybody needs to have a degree in this or a PhD in this to work in the area. Developing apprenticeship programs to help, fill the gap for electricians there. So they don't need to know necessarily a huge amount about the actual solar cells that they're working with, but they need to be able to have that knowledge to be able to connect to the grid. So creating those types of apprenticeships are really important now. And I think a lot of governments are seeing that as we see that skills shortage, they're starting to see that need for these types of tradesmen and the qualifications. In recent years there was this sort of encouragement of people towards further education and training and higher degrees and all of that, which of course I'm biased in that, so I think of course we should all do that. But I do agree though that they're not necessary for everything. Not everybody needs to have one of these, and not everyone is suited to doing so. So having things like apprenticeships, I agree as well with Tom when he says about having that experience for students. So allowing them to have some type of internship programs, getting them into industry as part of their education, as part of their training, is really key in helping them to understand, while this is what we learn in the classroom or in the lecture theatres, this is actually what way it's done in practice, and this is the way that this particular company, deals with certain issues, and and it's not sort of specific to that company. It's maybe just not as educators what we would be telling students to do, but that's the practice, and sometimes they're different. And so it's just to make students aware of that they're closer to industry and more ready for that industrial job, and getting into there and being. And the more they're aware of these different areas and disciplines, the more they're able to collaborate and to have that good, knowledgeable focus within the area. So I think the key thing is, in terms of adaptability. So really just ensuring that students are, even as engineers, we were always, there was a lot of focus on, mitigation when we talked about climate action, how do we stop it, whereas now there's a lot of focus on adaptation. So now we know these things are changing. How do we actually work with nature to help nature to adapt with us as we continue to cause this change. So it's really those types of things, having adaptable. I mean, we're thinking in terms of skill sets. We still need our grid management, grid integration. That's really going to be key into the future. Even cybersecurity and more into the the software development. That IoT, that interconnection, as we move more towards smart grids, is going to be really important as well. So there's lots of circular economy too, and sustainability is really one of our future needs as well, as we need graduates in all of these areas, and we need them quickly, I think, is the main point of this.
Thanks, Sarah. And then Pia, once people are already in the industry, how can we ensure that they're being upskilled and that they stay up to date with these constant changes in the industry?
Continuous learning and adaptation to industry changes are critical at every level. But if we have a look at, for example, young professionals, they really need to set up the fundamental techniques. They get to know everything about the energy industry and also, for example, everything about gridX. So they'll definitely will have a steep learning curve. Same as for seniors or professionals who have, I don't know, between 5 and 15 years of experience, and they mostly know their strengths and weaknesses. So they want to step out of their comfort zone, want to dive into a new industry, which definitely, and the energy industry definitely has a lot to offer. So I would also say very high learning curves for these people. And same goes with director and C-level. I mean, they have to have a little bit more of a global perspective. They have to combine their technical or strategic decisions with the industry changes. They have to focus on staff growth and so on, but also very high learning curves. So for everyone who really wants to join the energy industry, the industry has so much to offer and so high learning curves for each and everyone.
Thanks, Pia. And Thomas, obviously, Tobias mentioned before that, some people might come from the pharmaceuticals industry. Where are you seeing people come from? And also, how can we balance that? Obviously, there's fossil fuels to renewable energy, but also people need to come from somewhere. So what are you seeing and what do you think might happen in the future with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a question that we're constantly asking ourselves as well every single day, is where are we finding these people? I think to give you quite a general answer, the real answer is everyone. The people are coming from everywhere. It doesn't matter really where they're coming from. There's a lot of individuals that are moving away from traditional sectors, like Tobias mentioned here, with oil and gas heating system installers. They're moving into solar installation or heat pump installation, for example. But we are also seeing a significant amount of people moving away from finance, as an example, which is really interesting because we are seeing a lot of people in the financial sector move into sustainable finance, or they're moving into ESG, or they're moving into sustainable impact investing. So I think the real answer is it's coming from everywhere. A lot of sectors are seeing a shift of people moving into the energy market, but also the sustainability sector as a whole. I do think, though, as we move forward, I think a lot of people are becoming more educated about how our financial systems are working. And we speak to a significant amount of candidates that want to move away from the huge banks and financial institutions that kind of run our world. And they're kind of having a bit of a second thought about, is this really what I want to do with my life moving forward? And then they want to move into a sector such as this. And as we've already said, the good news is it doesn't matter where you're coming from. There is a job for you. There's a vacancy somewhere with a business that needs your skill set. And with a little bit of education and a lot of excitement, but also ambition to work in the sector, I think anyone can learn the skills that they need to be successful in the ecosystem.
Thanks very much. Nice words to finish on, a very inspirational note at the end there. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Pia, Sarah, and Tobias for a wonderful session there. Lots of great insights, and I'm very excited to see where we go in the future in terms of people entering the energy industry.